السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله فإن الله تعالى مع المتقين. وبعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us as an ummah to have a role model whom we can look to and follow in every single aspect of life. The Prophet ﷺ, he taught us how to be a leader. He taught us how to be a husband. He taught us how to be a father. He taught us how to be an employer and how to be employed. He taught us how to fight if we have to fight, and how to be peaceful when we should be peaceful, and so on and so forth. The Prophet ﷺ, he taught us how to use the bathroom, and he taught us how to eat, i.e. the best of ways. The best of ways if we follow him. Some of the ulama of the past, they go so far as to say that to live like the Prophet ﷺ in circumstance is the best of ways of living, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the best of this life. So for example, those who live a life of abstinence from this dunya and perhaps even poverty, they are living the best of life. Why? Because that's the way the Prophet ﷺ lived. And our failings in life, generally speaking, are due to our failings in following the Prophet ﷺ. That's the reality. Where we fail, it's because of our failure to follow the clear guidance sent to us as mankind by our Creator, who knows us best through the best of His creation, the Prophet ﷺ. And there is an area of our lives, unfortunately today, that failure is becoming quite prevalent. And it's on the increase. And that is marriage. We are seeing a dramatic rise in the failure of marriages within the Muslim community, both in the West and in the East. And there are many aspects, many reasons. And here I'm not speaking about failure where there is no way to rectify the situation. For example, you have an oppressive person in the relationship. You have someone who is abusive and so on and so forth. That situation, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the increase in failure of marriage, where failure does not need to occur. And I have some points that I would like to cover, bi-idhnillah, that should contribute towards a healthy marriage. And unfortunately, many of these points, they don't actually need to be heard and spoken and clarified. But because we've come so far away from what it should be like in marriage, these things have to be clarified. If we were to follow the Prophet ﷺ, these things would be clear to us anyway. And one point that I have not mentioned, that I'm going to mention prior to going into the points I have, and this point is a major contributing factor to the failure of marriages: materialism and love of this dunya. Materialism and love of this dunya, where the man is not satisfied with what he has and the woman is not satisfied with what she has, and they always look up rather than look down. What don't I have? Rather than what do I have and what others don't have. The man looking at fake women online with their filters and their whatever else it is that they do to themselves, and comparing those fake women to his wife. And the woman looking at fake men online, hiring watches and cars, etc. for a picture, and comparing that to her husband. Love of this life, love of the dunya, is a major contributing factor in the failure of many areas of our lives as a community. And once we rid our hearts of the dunya and love for this dunya, our lives will be much better. Because we will find contentment and we will find peace. But back to the point. the first and the foremost contributing factor towards a healthy marriage after tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to have respect and mercy. To have respect and mercy for our spouse. And subhanallah, today it's becoming ever increasingly common that men are swearing at their wives, women swearing at their husbands, and sometimes these men have big beards. Sometimes these men are praying 5 times a day in the masjid, and these sisters have hijabs and abayas. Subhanallah al-azim. What type of behavior is this? Swearing at your husband or your wife? Swearing in front of the children? Unacceptable behavior. And if there is a person who swears at his spouse, he should feel ashamed and disgusted with himself. Especially if he's a man. Especially if he's a man. Not befitting of a man to swear at his wife. Not acceptable, not excusable. It doesn't matter what she does. In fact, swearing is not from the character of a Muslim, full stop. Even my enemy, I should not be swearing at him as a Muslim. I should not be talking about him in a bad manner with my tongue as a Muslim. We have respect even for our enemies in Islam. That was the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And he's the best of examples. If we want to take the non-Muslims as an example, yes, swear. Abuse. Be disrespectful. But be careful. Because if you take them as an example, you'll end up where they've headed now. نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. They forgot about Allah, and so Allah made them forget themselves. It's not acceptable. Respect. Respect. And many men misunderstand what it means to have respect. To have respect from your wife does not mean that she is a servant in your household. It doesn't mean that she is a slave and a khadimah. That's not respect. The Prophet ﷺ did not expect that from his wives. The Sahaba did not expect that from their wives. Respect is the way we talk to each other. And mercy. If I am not going to have mercy upon my spouse, upon my wife, if a woman is not going to have mercy upon her husband, then who are they going to have mercy upon after that? And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man la yarham la yurham." Whoever does not show mercy will be shown no mercy. By who? By Ar-Rahman. Man la yarham la yurham. But yet you will find someone soft outside, smiling, approachable. Inside the house, a tyrant, oppressive, abusive. This person should look in the mirror and feel ashamed. This is not the way of Islam. Man la yarham la yurham. The second point, there has to be an element of transparency between the husband and the wife. There has to be an element of transparency. It's a relationship. It's a relationship. Relationships, human relationships, require transparency, require trust. And one of the problems in marriage today is, for many of us, we treat marriage like it's a contractual transaction. I give you this, therefore you should give me that. The Prophet ﷺ did not treat his wives like that. The Prophet ﷺ treated his wives with love and respect, transparency, openness. The Prophet ﷺ treated his wives as friends. Likewise us, this is how we should treat our wives, and our wives should treat us. But transparency requires a level of acceptability. Acceptability, i.e., I am open to the views, to the feelings, and to the perspectives of my spouse. I am open to listen to their side. Because many times what happens, the husband has a view and the wife has a view. And they don't see it from the other side. The wife, she wants to talk. The husband comes home, he's tired from work. The wife's been at home all day with the kids. She hasn't had adult interaction. And she wants someone to talk to. But the husband's tired, he's drained. The wife's only seeing it from her side. He doesn't want to talk to me, he doesn't care about me, etc. And the husband's only seeing it from his side. She's selfish. She doesn't consider the fact that I've come home from work. She's ungrateful. But if the wife were to take a moment and think, my husband's very tired, he's drained. Perhaps he doesn't have the emotional capacity to listen right now. And the husband were to think from the wife's side, she's been at home with the kids all day. She hasn't had adult interaction. She's been serving the household, etc. Then they would start to meet in the middle. And there would be a level of tolerance and acceptance between the two. But instead, you have two people going like this. Because they're only seeing things from their side. And on that part, there has to be a level of emotional detachment. Meaning, we do not try to take responsibility for the feelings of our other. Why? That's not our responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ. Allah guides whom He wants, you don't guide anyone. You have to put the effort in, the result is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If the husband is providing, the husband is taking care of his wife, the husband is doing what he should be doing, he's trying to be a considerate husband, and his wife is still upset, still moody, still sometimes ungrateful, that's not his responsibility. He's doing what he should be doing. Likewise, the other side. The wife is being caring. The wife is being concerning. The wife is obliging her husband physically, etc. But yet he's still a grump and he's still moody. That's not her responsibility. I.e., give each other space. Give each other space. As humans, we're going to have feelings. We need to allow ourselves time to work through our own feelings sometimes, and not assume that we're responsible for the feelings of others. The fourth point, and this one, unfortunately, and it's been spoken about previously, multiple times in fact, and this one is a major one. This one is a major one. Negligence of responsibility on behalf of the men. Negligence of responsibility on behalf of the men. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, and this hadith should be enough for us to take the responsibility that we have as men seriously. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ, that the men have what? Responsibility over their wives, their children, etc. Yes, but are we taking that responsibility? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the fadl, the virtue of men. But we sometimes talk about the virtue of men, that the man is the head of the household, etc. But that's actually a responsibility and a burden. Why? Because on Yawm al-Qiyamah, the man is going to be held accountable for his wife and for his children. The wife will not be held accountable for her husband. It's the man held accountable. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, كَفَى لِلْمَرْءِ إِثْمًا أَن يُضَيِّعَ مَن يَقُودُ. It's enough of a sin for a man to go to Jahannam that he neglects those whom he is responsible for. How many Muslim men do we have today? They have children in non-Muslim countries, wives in non-Muslim countries, yet they're not here. And they don't come here for months, sometimes years. And they turn up when there's a problem. Now it's too late for the solution. It's too late. Where were you for the last few years? When your wife needed you, when your children needed you. And they're happy and fine for their wives to work every day, for their children to be outside, no concern, and perhaps they're enjoying their lives elsewhere. But that's not the way of the Muslim man. And that's not from taqwa. That's not from taqwa. Someone came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him to join him in battle. And he asked him about his parents. Are they alive? He said yes. he said, فَفِيهِمَا أو فِيهِمَا فَجَاهِدْ أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. He said, so in your parents is your jihad. Take care of your parents. What about the man who has a wife and children and there's no jihad, yet he's not taking care of them? He's not taking care of them. Many of the problems in the Muslim community today can be attributed back to the lack of responsibility on behalf of the men. And many men don't act like men in their relationships. This is a blunt reality. Many men don't act like men in their relationships. Why? They're arguing with their wives. Arguing with the wife. Did the Prophet ﷺ argue with his wives? Did the Sahaba argue with their wives? It's not befitting of a man to argue with his wife. It's not befitting. And many arguments can be ended by not getting into the argument in the first place. And many women will say this themselves, that women lose respect for the man when he starts to argue with her. It's not befitting. If the man is the head of the household and the man is responsible, why is the man arguing with those whom he's responsible for? That's not leadership. That's not manliness. These things need to change. Because if we don't change them, the next generation will suffer. And the generation after them will suffer. And the fifth point, again, this one is as important as the last. Negligence of responsibility on behalf of the men, negligence of care on behalf of the women. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned a hadith which I'm sure every husband knows, that if the man engages his wife intimately and she does not oblige, or he calls her to the bed and she says no, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry with her so long as her husband is angry with her. This hadith tells us what? That women have a duty of care for their husbands. Men have a duty of responsibility for their wives. Women have a duty of care for their husbands. And perhaps we don't want to hear this, but just as the most important aspect for the man in relation to his wife is to provide, that's the main responsibility. One of the main responsibilities of the women is to oblige her wife, or to oblige their husbands physically. That's one of the main responsibilities. Why? Because that's the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us. Allah has created men with desire. And Allah knows the creation better than the creation know themselves. Therefore, within the Sharia, it's haram for a woman to say no to her husband when her husband would like to be intimate with her, so long as she does not have a valid reason. What's a valid reason in the Sharia? That she is menstruating or she is ill. Perhaps there are other similar reasons, but those are the main two. As for being tired, no, that's not an excuse. As for not wanting to, no, that's not an excuse. And just as men don't want to hear about their responsibilities, women don't want to hear about their responsibilities. But at the end of the day, whether we hear about them or not, whether we like them or not, we're going to be questioned about them on Yawm al-Qiyamah. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will question us. The woman that says no to her husband is sinning. Sinning, haram. It's a sin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be angry with her until she pleases her husband. Likewise, the man who does not provide for his wife is sinning until he provides for her. But to the best of capacity. To the best of capacity. If the man is trying and the woman is trying, that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. But today we have men who say, I'm not going to pay anything. I want my wife to pay half. 50-50. That's not from Islam. A man's pride should hurt if he can't provide for his wife and his kids. But some men are happy for their wives to go to the local council and ask for money and lie and pretend that they're not in the house. That's not from Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man istaghna aghnahu Allah." The one who seeks independence, Allah will make him independent. Al-yadu al-ulya khayrun min al-yad al-sufla. The giving hand is better than the taking hand. Would the Prophet ﷺ take money from the local council? Would Umar ibn al-Khattab take money from the local council, non-Muslim? Would Abu Bakr or Uthman or Ali radiallahu anhum ajma'een? No way. Why? Because it's a shame that a Muslim is taking money from a non-Muslim and he is able, capable of working, but he doesn't want to. Not acceptable in Islam. Not acceptable. Whether we like to hear it or not. Just as for the woman saying no to her husband, not acceptable in Islam, unless there is a valid reason. Likewise, if a man cannot provide for his wife, he has a valid reason, that's different. The sixth point, which has been touched upon, breakdown in intimacy and refusing to be intimate, comes under duty of care. And the duty of care that a wife has to her husband is not only intimacy. It's not only intimacy, but that's one of the major contributing factors towards the breakdown of marriage today. Men seeking secret wives, which again is not acceptable. It's not from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, nor is it from the actions of a righteous man to go and have a secret wife. No. The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to tell people about his walima, to tell people about his marriage. Marry like a man. Marry like a man. Don't hide it from people. But one of the reasons, a breakdown in intimacy in the first relationship. Another very important point, negative assumptions. Having negative assumptions about the spouse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اجْتَنِبُوا كَثِيرًا مِنَ الظَّنِّ إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٍ. O you who believe, stay away from too much thinking, negative thoughts. Some types of thoughts are sinful. But yet today, these are not only thoughts, these are verbalized. The wife verbalizes her assumptions about her husband. The husband verbalizes his assumptions about his wife. This is from shaitan. It's not acceptable, it's a sin, it's haram to think negative things about others, let alone to verbalize them. The next point, and this has been touched upon briefly, but we really need to spend time on this point. Understanding gender roles from the framework of Islam. From the framework of Islam, not in accordance to the confusion that is going on today, where you have the feminists on one side and the red pill movement on the other side. Both sides are as confused and deluded as each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet ﷺ as a clear guidance and example for mankind. We don't need to take gender roles from modern philosophies and ways of life, etc. Islam has made it clear. But the problem is what? We don't look to Islam. The problem is we don't look to Islam. Sometimes we look to culture first. Culture can be problematic. Culture can be problematic. The Prophet ﷺ was sent to the Sahaba who had a culture. They refined the culture in accordance to the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Gender roles are defined and they're clear cut. If we stick to our gender roles in marriage, marriage will be peaceful. Marriage will be something which we find contentment within. But if the man tries to be a woman and the woman tries to be a man, what's going to happen? It's going to be a clash. It's going to be a big problem. It's not going to work. And that's what's happening today. Literally happening today. The 9th and the 10th point. Dua and tawakkul. Dua. ربي هب لي من أزواجي وذريتي قرة أعين واجعلني للمتقين إماما. This is a dua I should be saying often in my sujood when I'm supplicating with my hands raised. when I'm in the masjid, when I'm fasting, asking Allah to grant me happiness in my spouse and in my children. And this should be said even before marriage. And lastly, tawakkul ala Allah. Not to overthink things, rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and remember that the spouse is rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's maqdoor. If I have a problematic spouse, that's what Allah has given me to work with. So I have to work with it. Not run away from the situation. Work with the situation. Improve the situation. So that as a collective we can turn away from what has become a major problem in the constant divorce taking place within our communities. Married on Friday and divorced on Wednesday. With no exaggeration. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us success and tawfiq and guide us to that which is pleasing to Him. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده وصلوات ربي وسلامه على أشرف الأنبياء ومن تبعه وبعد. Sometimes, unfortunately, the truth is bitter and it has to be said bluntly. When you go to the doctor will not tell you that you have a medical condition in a way which is pleasing to you. The doctor will tell you, you are sick, you have this condition, and we need to take this course of action. The doctor cannot be considerate of your feelings, because if he were to be considerate of your feelings, he cannot do his job. He has to tell you what it is, how it is, like it is. Likewise within Islam. Within Islam, we have to say things how they are, and we have to be very clear, and we cannot beat around the bush. Otherwise, these problems will continue to linger. And so it's important that if I have heard something today that relates to me, I reflect upon it and I make change. Because I am not talking about anyone particular. I am not talking about any family in particular. I'm speaking generally. That these are trends and occurrences which are on the increase and the rise. So if anything relates to me as a person that was mentioned today, then I am the one that needs to make change. I am the one that needs to make change, and I shouldn't be offended. If I'm offended, I should be offended with myself for those actions. And I should blame myself for those actions. And I should take it upon myself to make change. Why? Because on Yawm al-Qiyamah, I am going to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and I am going to be questioned. I will have no one to blame. I will have no one to blame. And so we have to take this life that we have seriously. Because we are not here to play and to enjoy and to have feelings. We're not here for that. We're here to be tested. And everything we have and everything that we don't have is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A test. If I have a wife, she's a test. And I am a test to her. If I have children, they are a test. And I am a test to them. From Allah's mercy is that the test is enjoyable. But that's a part of the test. Why? Because I can lose myself in the enjoyment. And I can forget that I am actually being tested. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to follow the Prophet ﷺ in all aspects of life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectify our marriages. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us role models as husbands and make the women role models as wives. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to follow the best of role models in our marriages. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وارض اللهم عن أبي بكر وعن عمر وعن عثمان وعن علي وعن سائر الصحابة أجمعين اللهم تب علينا واعف عنا ووفقنا في الزواج يا رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة.
Please make space. A lot of brothers outside waiting for space.